Had you found yourself in the fall of 1972 on a small college campus in Portland, Oregon, you may have seen this young man. But you had better have introduced yourself early, because he only lasted one semester. He dropped out. But he was too embarrassed when he went home to his step-parents to tell them that he had left campus, that he returned the next semester. But with no money, he spent most of that time sleeping on the floors of friends. He collected Coke bottles to turn in for deposits to earn food money. And then he would take weekly trips to the Hare Krishna temple simply to get a free meal. Well, that ruse wasn't going to last long, so he returned home, took a job at an electronic gaming company, because his ultimate goal was to take a spiritual journey to India. And after 2 years, he had enough money to do that. So off he went and spent 7 months visiting ashrams in India. He returned home a Buddhist with his head shaved and experimenting with hallucinogenic drugs. He was 20 years old, 1975. And if I told you after that this man was going to go on to change your life, you'd probably find that hard to believe. It's the story of Steve Jobs. And my point is this, that there's no inherent qualities that you brought into this world that actually dictate how good you can be at what you choose to do. Now, we do know there are some parameters relative to intelligence, and if you're going to be a professional athlete, relative to your physical development. But those are minor characteristics to the things that we really know to help develop expertise. In fact, research has consistently shown there are 3 things. And the good news is that every one of them is under your control. So we know this. No one is born an expert. How good you will be is determined by you. So here are the 3 characteristics, and then I'll spend a little time just talking about each. First is experience. You can't really be good at anything until you experience it. Next takes knowledge. Most of you will probably concede that the best people in the world, the experts, really know as much as, if not more than, most people about their subject. And the third are the skills. Every one of you has a toolbox, a tool set, if you will, to do the things that you need to do. So let's take a moment and explore some of these. First of all, experience. You know, this is always something that's interesting as a college professor to talk to your students about because they don't have any. It's not until you get out till you actually realize how important experience is. And I say that not as a disclaimer as a university professor, because I know most of you, when you graduated, you got out into the real world, you thought, they didn't teach us that at UGA, did they? No. Experience is a rich source of practical knowledge that you cannot get anywhere else. We simply can't teach experience at the university. Next, you learned what works and what doesn't work. And only, again, you can get that through experience. You begin to understand your environment. Most of you are in business. How many of you are in the financial business? Yeah, many of you. I'm sure if you think about your institution that you work for, whether it's a large corporation like Wells Fargo or like Jeff, kind of a private investment firm, the culture is a bit different. And you don't understand that culture until you really have some experience in it. And then finally, it helps you develop the skills and identify the skills that will make you successful in what you do. That's the benefits of experience. All right, but here's the caveat. Experience alone does not make you an expert. Let me tell you just a brief story. Prior to coming to the University of Georgia, I spent some time at the University of Oregon. Beautiful state. One of the things that I did there is I had the opportunity to supervise student teachers. That meant people who were going to be public school teachers. They would go out and they'd do their practical experience. Well, one semester I got a phone call 2 days into the semester saying that I had to get out to this school because this student teacher just wasn't going to make it. I was shocked. And I told the other faculty. They were surprised as well because we thought, I'll use a student named Debbie, was going to be one of the best graduates we had ever had. So out I went to the school, and I walked in, and the cooperating teacher met me. He knew I was coming. He says, you got to get her out of here. And I said, what's the problem? I'll call him Jim. What's the problem, Jim? And he said, she just doesn't listen to me. She thinks that she knows everything there is to know. And I said, well, listen, why don't we just, let me watch her teach, and then afterwards we'll meet, which we did. So we got into his office, and no sooner we'd sat down, and he starts to say, she just doesn't respect the experience I have. I've been teaching 25 years, and before he could finish that sentence, she said, wait, you taught 1 year, and you've repeated it 24 times. Ooh. My immediate thought was she was probably right. This guy was known for being a wonderful guy, great with kids, and people loved him, very reliable. But if you looked at his lessons today, you could probably turn the clock back 25 years and see the same thing. All right. So we immediately moved Debbie, and just to push that story forward, 10 years later, Debbie became the first physical education state teacher of the year in California. I mean, of all subjects. That's how good she was. Right. But the point was that he wasn't any better today than he was 25 years ago. And I'm sure most of you know people like that. They've been in the business for a lot of times. So when people say, I've been doing this for 10 or 15 or 20 years, you know, as somebody who's studied experts, that doesn't really impress me. Because you need the experience, yes, but it doesn't make you better. And I'll give you an example in your own life. Look at your handwriting. Yeah, I see people smiling and laughing. Of course. Is it any better today than it was last week? Absolutely not. A year ago, 5 years ago? No, it's not. So experience alone doesn't make you a better handwriter. All right. So what is it that experts do with their experience that makes them great? And we've done this study through different domains, sports and other areas as well. And what we find is that at the end of critical experiences, right, whether it's a game or it's a meeting they had or a sales call, for example, what do they do? And here's this. They ask themselves 3 questions. Now, they don't all use this language, but here are the 3 questions. The first thing they say is, what did I do well? Because it's important to know what your strengths are. Because the next time you're in a similar situation, you want to bring that full ammunition in, don't you? You want to be able to know what your strengths are so when you plan strategically, you can build on those. So it's important to identify what your strengths are. Here's the next question. What could I improve? Not what was I bad at or what was poor. Don't think that way. Think, what can I improve? And again, we're talking about experts, people who are absolutely at the top of their game. And they always believe there's areas for improvement. And I'm going to guess if you think carefully about your own experiences, you can always identify something that could get better. And here's the final question. How do I improve? And if you ask yourself these 3 questions at the end of every important experience, you will get better. So what I'd like you to do right now, if you don't mind, is think about something that you've done recently. In your professional life, if you'd like to use your personal life, that's okay too. But something in your professional life. Perhaps it was a meeting or a big event that took place. And ask yourself these 3 questions. What did I do well? What could I have improved? And how could I have improved it? And then once you have those 3 answers, what I'd like you to do is turn to the person to your left or to your right and share that with them, and then listen to what they have to say. Go ahead. Take a few minutes. About another 30 seconds. Okay, if I could have your attention. I hope you found that little exercise helpful. I'm going to put somebody on the spot here. I should have cued him that I was going to do this, but we're blessed this morning to have in this room, in my opinion, one of the greatest athletes in America today. How many of you have heard of the Ironman competition? Yeah, okay. The World Championships are held in Hawaii every year. Some of you know that. What a great place for a championship. I think we ought to have this breakfast in Hawaii. Natalie, where are you? No, just kidding. All right. Well, this gentleman, who I consider a dear friend, turned 60 in October. And how he celebrated his 60th birthday was he got up early and he went for a swim in the open ocean a little over 2 miles. Immediately got out of the water, got on a bicycle, and rode through the lava fields for 112 miles. Got off the bike and then completed a full marathon, 26.2 miles. Mike, would you mind standing up? This is Mike Ween. Thank you, Mike. All right,
Somebody's supposed to yell, he doesn't look like he's 60.
That's why I had to tell him, Mike.
I'm older than him.
And one of the
my three.
and I was just going to say, one of the things I love about Mike, we're dear friends, is he emails me and blogs, and every time, don't you ask yourself these questions, Mike, at the end? Not using that language, but you always say, this is what was done well, here's where I can improve, and in my training, this is what I'm going to do better, don't you? Yeah. And we find that consistently. And I'm going to guess if you talk to somebody you consider at the top of their game or the top of your game, and you ask them what they think after an important experience, that's what they'll find. And I'll also submit this to you. If you were going to take one thing out of this room this morning, this right here will probably serve you better than anything else I have to share with you. Because it's how to use your experience to make you better tomorrow than you are today.